In this screencast, we are going to discuss how to write concisely. The reason we want to write concisely is because this helps us in conveying the message by using fewer words and shorter sentences. Now, by this, I do not mean to say that you have to write short sentences only or long sentences are bad. What it means is if there is a possibility of saying something with fewer words but with the same harmony, with the same melody, then you should go for that rather than unnecessarily stretching the sentence. So how can you do that? There are a few things that can help you to be more concise, and the first is always be more direct when you are saying things. As an example, in this sentence you can see that it says, I was supposed to have my house painted every 5 years, and since it has been 3 years since I last painted my house, I have called the painter to paint my house. You can see the sentence is unnecessarily long. Although the idea is clear and you can understand what the person is trying to say, it's quite possible to say the same thing with fewer words if we do a little bit of restructuring and delete a few words from this sentence. And the example of that is this sentence. I called the painter to paint my house because it has been 5 years since I last had it painted. The same sentence can be written with fewer words, but is still retaining the same meaning. I called the painter to paint my house because it had been 5 years since I last had it painted. So you can see that we are saying the same thing but with fewer words. So as long as there is a possibility of saying things directly, do not waste your words. The second thing you can do is use positive language. And what I mean by that is if you look at these two examples, the first one says he does not speak politely, and the second one says I think I did not understand what you said in the way you wanted me to understand. In both of these sentences, you can see there is a negative language, does not and did not. Now think, how can we say the same thing without using does not and did not? This way. Rather than saying he does not speak politely, I can simply say he is arrogant. And this reduces the number of words and still retains the same meaning. And in the second sentence, I can simply say, I think I misunderstood you. So when you are writing something, think if you really need to write that in negative sentence. And also think if it is possible to say the same thing in positive way and what would you need to do that. This way you will reduce the number of words used in expressing your ideas and make your sentences concise and clear. The third idea here is avoid redundancy. Now, what is redundancy? Redundancy means using extra words, unnecessary words. If you look at these two examples, you can see the first one says return back and second one says repeat again. So what is wrong with these two sentences, or what is wrong with these two expressions? The first one says return back, and what we know is return itself means to come back. So return back is a redundancy error, or in this expression back is extra word which we do not need. And similarly in repeat again, we do not need again because repeat means to do something again, to say something again, right? So we can see that return itself has the word back inside it and repeat has the word again inside it. So there is no need to use these two words after return and repeat. And this is what we call redundancy. So that is the reason why we do not need back and again after return and repeat, and we should not use them. Now you need to be more mindful of such errors in the future as well. In fact, I have included the list of redundancies that we often use in day-to-day practice and in writing and speaking. Please go through the list and make sure that you avoid this kind of expressions in future. The next thing is do not overuse adverbs. Now, if you are not sure about adverbs, these are the words which we use to explain verbs, and usually they have ly at the end. In these three examples, softly, completely, and quickly are adverbs. But if you look at the expressions carefully, what you can see is these adverbs are unnecessary. The reason for that is whispered softly. Is it possible for someone to whisper loudly? The word softly is built in the word whispered, so you don't need to mention it separately. Finished completely is another example here. Finished itself means you have completed something, so you don't need to say finished completely, so completely is unnecessary. And jumped quickly. When you are jumping, you cannot jump slowly. It's always quick. So these are a few other things that you need to keep in mind. And what I'm telling you here, or the tip here is try to see if you are unnecessarily using ly words. And think if you would need them, if you really need them to express what you are trying to express. That's why in these three examples, we do not need softly, completely, and quickly. How can you work on this area? How can you improve your ability to express your ideas without using adverbs? What you can simply do is whenever you write something, have a look at what you have written and think if you really need the adverb that you have used, or if you really need that ly word that you have used. As an example, Steve drove crazily, chaotically, and wildly down the highway, putting every other driver at risk. If you look at this sentence, you might feel like crazily and chaotically and wildly actually is increasing the drama of the sentence. But if we think about it logically, we do not need the words chaotically and wildly, because crazily itself means chaotically and wildly. So we do not need these two words. And they are not adding any extra information to the sentence, and that's why you should get rid of them. So the sentence actually makes sense even if you write this much. Steve drove crazily down the highway, putting every other driver at risk. So this much is enough. So be careful of using the adverbs. I'm not saying again that you should never use adverbs. What I'm saying is don't use adverbs which you do not really need. The next thing is use strong verbs. Now what I mean by that, let's look at this example here to understand this concept. I want to check everything carefully before I start working on this project. This sentence looks fine, but there is a ly word there, carefully. As I said, every time you use ly word, you have to ask yourself, do I really need it? Because usually people use ly words when their verb is weak. I'm using carefully here, maybe because I'm not happy with the word check, because I feel like just check will not convey the message with the same emphasis that I want to convey it. That's why I now need to think if there is another way I could say this without using carefully, and the answer for that is I can simply say I want to examine everything, because to examine something means to check something carefully. So this is a stronger verb. And you can also see that the second part of the sentence also has been rewritten as before starting the project, rather than saying before I start working on the project. Okay, this is another example of using strong verbs, and you can see here the bomb exploded so strongly that it shook the building. Again, here exploded so strongly. That means I'm not happy with just the word exploded, because I think it does not have the strength that I want it to have, or it does not pass the same message with the same strength that I want to pass. That means maybe I'm using weak verb. So can I rewrite this sentence in a way so that I avoid using strongly? And yes, it's possible. How do I do that? I can simply write the explosion shook the building. Okay, let's revise the main concepts we discussed one more time. So first, as I said, be direct when you are expressing your ideas. Do not use words unnecessarily and do not stretch sentences, because that does not help you in getting more score, neither it helps you in expressing your ideas more clearly. Second, do not use words which you do not need. We call them redundancy errors, so avoid them. In order to learn more about it, please go through the list that we have included in your lessons. Third, be careful while using adverbs. It's not that you have to completely avoid them, but be careful while using them. And if you have been using adverbs quite often, then that means most likely you either don't have enough ideas about how to avoid adverbs, or your verbs are usually weak. Because you should always use strong verbs, and if your verbs are not strong, that's when you are more likely to use adverbs. So these are some of the tips which can help you in writing concisely, expressing your ideas more concisely. And if you want to get better in this area, then practice a lot. How should you practice? First, write a draft. That means just write something that you want to write. Now go through your answer and underline all adverbs that you have written, and underline all words that you think you do not need. Remove all of them and then write one more time. Now compare the second answer with the first answer and try to see if the second answer is a better expression of your ideas, is a better way to convey your message. Writing like this and practicing like this will make you a very good writer. Although for PT, you do not need to go to such depth, but it's always a good idea to practice conciseness for your future and for many other things. It's always a good idea to practice writing concisely, because it helps you to become a better communicator and creates more opportunities for you. That's all for this video. I'll see you in the next one.